had lived in the state of Utah for more than 15 years before moving here to Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. Along with many Jews, Muslims, and Christians, I also found a strong Mormon presence here. For example, this is the Jerusalem campus of Brigham Young University. This is Greg Gifford. I met him while he was touring the country. Greg is a generational Mormon and a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
To me, the Book of Mormon is a beautiful book. I love reading the Book of Mormon. All of Christianity could be likened to an elementary education. I believe that Mormonism is kind of a high school education. We just have more information than Christians.
Greg agreed to get together at my Jerusalem apartment to have a discussion about the prophecies of both Mormon and biblical prophets. We begin our conversation focused on the test of a prophet, found in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18. Deuteronomy 18:21 asks a question: how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? Would you consider that to be an important question to ask?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
That's the difference between a man speaking and the Lord speaking.
The next verse answers this question. If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. What is it that would cause a prophet to fail the test of a prophet?
Whatever the prophet proclaims has to take place or come true, it says right there.
Which makes sense, right? Because by nature, God is the only one that knows the future.
You and I both don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes.
It's a brilliant and very logical test, isn't it?
Yeah.
A prophet is someone who claims God is speaking through them. So how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? The answer is the test of a prophet. Here's how it works. Since only God knows the future, people can test a prophet by how accurately he predicts the future. If even one of his predictions does not take place or come true, that prophet fails the test. And if a prophet fails, then God commands the people to put him to death and to not be afraid of him. The introduction page to the Book of Mormon reads, "The book was written by many ancient prophets, by the spirit of prophecy and revelation."
By the spirit of prophecy and revelation.
Then we should be able to test. We should be able to take this Deuteronomy 18 simple test and apply it to Mormon prophets, correct?
Correct.
And we should be able to take that simple test, and to be fair, we should also apply it to biblical prophets.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you willing to do that?
Yeah. Let's do it.
The first prophet we will test is the Book of Mormon prophet Nephi. One of his prophecies is summarized by the Mormon Church under the chapter heading of 1 Nephi chapter 13. Here Nephi is predicting the loss of many plain and precious parts of the Bible, causing a need for the restoration of the gospel, the coming forth of latter-day Scripture. So you would agree then that Christianity is based on the Old and the New Testament alone as Scripture, and then Mormonism is saying, well, no, there's a problem with the Bible, it's been corrupted. This is the restoration of that corruption. And so these books you need to take into account into addition to the Bible.
Yes.
So this is what you would trust in as a Bible? Would it be like this? Would it be the Bible first and then Mormon scripture?
Well, it's been corrupted, so it's got to be this way.
It's got to be that way, okay.
Yeah.
In the Book of Mormon, the prophet Nephi also states, "Thou fool that shall say, a Bible, we have got a Bible, and we need no more Bible." So do you think that as a Christian, I'm a fool for believing in the Bible alone?
I do.
Really? The notes at the bottom of the page claim that this prophecy was given between 600 and 592 BC. At this time, the Mormon prophet Nephi prophesied that after the 12 apostles of the Lamb would come the formation of that great and abominable church. For behold, they have taken away from the gospel of the Lamb many parts which are plain and most precious. So around 600 BC, Nephi prophesied that after the 12 apostles of Jesus, the abominable church, which refers to the early Christian church, would corrupt the Bible. So let me make sure that I get this absolutely straight. Here's the Bible that I use as a Christian. What chapter 13 is saying is that plain and precious portions went missing from my Bible.
That's basically what our whole religion is based on, is that there's a lot of plain and precious truths that have been removed from the Bible. Because of these things which are taken away out of the gospel of the Lamb, Satan hath great power over them. And that great pit which hath been digged for them by that great and abominable church, which was founded by the devil and his children, that he might lead away the souls of men down to hell.
So is the Book of Mormon saying that because of this corruption of the Bible, those who follow this corrupted Bible would end up in hell?
Yes.
So to test Nephi's prophecy, I talked to Greek linguist Dr. Christoph Rico because he is an expert on the reliability of the Bible. Nephi is, according to Mormonism, is a prophet. And he is prophesying, if you look at the notes here, between 600 and 592 BC. So this is a prediction of the distant future.
Well, the first thing is I won't find any scholar who would take seriously this statement that this prophet is from the years 600 and 592 before Christ. The first question I would ask, or the first demand I would ask, is that they produce a single manuscript of this prophet. I mean, there is nothing. There is not a single manuscript, either from antiquity or even from the Middle Ages, that they could produce. So this is a text that has been written in modern times. I mean, there's nothing more that can be said about it.
Are there any ancient copies of the Book of Mormon that would predate the time of Joseph Smith?
No. Not here on earth, anyway.
But what happened was the gold plates were given to Joseph Smith. He copied them, he translated from them, and then the gold plates were taken back into heaven.
Okay. Tomorrow I can come and I say, look, I have had a revelation from heaven, and this is the holy book, and all the other stuff is nonsense. I can do that. So the only guarantor of it is me. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything.
So there are no ancient manuscripts to back up the prophecy of Nephi about the loss of many plain and precious parts of the Bible. In my conversation with Greg, he explained to me what the Mormon Church had taught him about how this corruption of the Bible occurred.
Well, it's always been my understanding that there has been one manuscript, and as it faded over time, then monks would recopy it over and over and over again. As the manuscript would fade, then they'd create a new one with new ink. And if they didn't like the way something read, or if they thought it was too controversial, they'd just leave it out.
Isn't it the case that in antiquity, the way that the Bible was preserved was that there was only one copy of the Bible, and that copy faded over time, and then as it faded, they would make another copy of it by copying it over, but just one copy at a time?
Not at all, not at all. The situation is completely different. What you do have in antiquity is, first of all, the church start spreading over the Roman Empire and other parts. So everywhere they need copies. So at the very beginning, what you need is copies of the New Testament, because
So they made thousands of copies.
of course.
Well, I understand after having been here and visited that there are literally thousands of manuscripts. People would go places and want to take their scriptures with them, so they would copy down from another manuscript, and whole bunches of people would do that. So there's literally thousands.
We have like 6,000 copies that go back to antiquity, that are either in Hebrew for the Old Testament or in Greek for the New Testament. If we are talking about the versions, the figure is much higher. We have 40,000 copies. So, which is something amazing. You don't have a single other book in antiquity where you have so many texts.
So let me get this straight. The Book of Mormon has 0 ancient manuscripts to back it up. Yet, it is criticizing the Bible of being unreliable, when the Bible has 40,000 ancient manuscripts to support it. If that were to happen, over and over again, that monks didn't like something, so they would take it out of the New Testament. With all that you have, with the different translations and all the fragments and all the copies that you have, would you be able to determine that happened?
Impossible.
This is impossible because soon after the original writings of the New Testament, thousands of copies were made. So if a monk wanted to make a change, his change would stand out like a sore thumb. This is also true for the Old Testament, but these copies are actually older than when Nephi says the corruption of the Bible took place. So, being here in Israel, we can test our modern Bibles with what's been found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I met up with Dead Sea Scroll expert Dr. Randall Price, who is excavating at Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. So again, Nephi prophesied that the Bible would be corrupted after the 12 apostles of Jesus. And because the Dead Sea Scrolls are older than this predicted corruption, we can compare the Dead Sea Scrolls with our modern Bibles to see if any plain and precious portions are missing.
This is Cave 1. This is where the first discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was made.
So the plain and precious things were missing, this is saying, after the 12 apostles and after the scriptures went to the Gentiles. What does the Dead Sea Scrolls say about that? Because that would predate that.
Yeah, obviously this is before Jesus' birth, before the birth of the church. They were hidden away, not discovered for 2,000 years after. So it gives us a chance to look at a history before any of this became controversy or any possible changes could have been introduced. And it tells us that the texts remain unchanged. There's nothing different between it and the translation from which our modern Bibles come. So there's nothing missing.
Are these plain and precious portions missing from the New Testament?
Look, when we are talking about the New Testament, we are talking about the best ever well-known book of antiquity. And the difference between what we know about the New Testament and any other book from antiquity is amazing.
And so if the reality is if it is this way, but we can show with the evidence that it hasn't been corrupted, that we have it preserved in our modern Bibles, then that would nullify that whole need for restoration.
In a nutshell.
Did that prophecy come true in history?
Absolutely not. When we compare all the ancient copies of the New Testament that we have, the differences are very small. So you cannot even show me a text where this has been done, because the difference between the different copies that we have are very, very, very tiny. They don't affect the substance of the meaning. It is like saying, instead of how can I put it, but saying however. It is this kind of small and tiny changes. You don't have changes that affect the substance of the meaning of the New Testament. So it's something that it's utterly impossible.
So, back to what is being claimed by Nephi in chapter 13, did his prediction that our modern Bibles would become corrupt after the time of the 12 apostles of the Lamb, did that come to pass in history?
I believe that, well, from what I've been taught as a youngster, yes, it has occurred.
And what does the evidence that you find here, going and looking at these ancient copies of the Bible, tell you in regards to that?
That it has not. They're all the same.
Then what would the logical conclusion be?
Well, it just shows Nephi was wrong when he made that statement.
Since Nephi's prediction that the Bible would be corrupted did not take place in history, he fails the test of a prophet. We can also test the prophets in the Bible. The central theme of the prophecies made by the Old Testament prophets is in the coming of a person, known as the Messiah, someone who would come to save and eventually rule the world. The writers of the New Testament believe that Jesus Christ was this Messiah. In the New Testament, the title Christ has the same meaning as the Old Testament title Messiah. The first biblical prophet we will test is Micah. Around 700 BC, Micah prophesied that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. Amazingly, a fragment containing Micah's prophecy was discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dr. Price took me to the cave where it was found.
What we know is beneath this floor, there were 15,000 fragments that were uncovered.
This fragment containing Micah 5:2 dates to 100 BC, making it a century older than the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. In Matthew's Gospel, he states that Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. And then he quotes Micah 5:2 to show that Jesus fulfills Micah's prophecy.
So there is a link between the prophecy of Micah, and then in the New Testament it is said that he was born in Bethlehem and that he fulfills that prophecy.
to Bethlehem for Christmas, along with crowds of people from all over the world. This is the Church of the Nativity. It's built over the traditional place of Jesus' birth, a site that pilgrims have been visiting for almost 2,000 years. Jewish archaeologist Dr. Gabriel Barkai has been working in Israel for more than 40 years.
Listen, I'm very objective. First of all, I'm an archaeologist, and I'm not Christian.
Where personally do you believe that Jesus was born?
Under the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem, there are some caves. And those cavities were in use in the first century beyond any doubt. For very important places, very significant places in Christian faith, I would regard the traditional places as authentic.
But Mike is not the only prophet who predicted where the Messiah would be born. In the Book of Mormon, the prophet Alma prophesied, "And behold, he shall be born of Mary at Jerusalem." You can turn to Alma chapter 7, verse 10.
Oh, this is that scripture.
Book of Mormon is saying that Jesus is born in Jerusalem. Micah is in the Bible is saying that the Messiah is born in Bethlehem. Can they both be right?
No.
Mormon scholars try to argue that since Bethlehem is so close to Jerusalem, they can be considered the same place.
Was Bethlehem part of the land of the Bible? Well, even today, if you go to Bethlehem, you realize it's essentially a suburb.
Bethlehem is how far away from Jerusalem? What, 6 miles? Of course it's going to be in the land of Jerusalem.
Is this for sure a mistake? Because Mormon scholars say, well, Bethlehem is close to Jerusalem, so they can be the same. But the historical geographers, in fact, I interviewed a historical geographer, and I didn't tell him what the issue was. I just started trying to convince him that Bethlehem and Jerusalem are so close to each other that they could be considered the same thing. And he treated me like I didn't know what I was talking about and corrected me. Have you ever heard of Bethlehem being described as the land of Jerusalem?
It's not the land of Jerusalem. Bethlehem is a city 6 miles south of Jerusalem.
Is there any way that you could say that Bethlehem is so close to Jerusalem that you could just call it Jerusalem?
No. And there's cities in between Bethlehem and Jerusalem.
Because Jesus was born in Jerusalem, right?
No, Jesus was born in Bethlehem.
So, historically, have you been to Bethlehem? Which one do you think is right historically?
Historically, it's Bethlehem. This causes me great angst. I'd like to say that Alma is a human, that he makes mistakes, but Deuteronomy says that in that context, you cannot make mistakes. So it's hard for me to declare that Alma, well, he obviously made a mistake.
So is there any other way to look at that but that's a mistake?
No.
So do you think there's any other way to look at this but that this is a mistake?
That it's just a mistake. I don't know what else to say about it. It's, how could you make this mistake? It's
But think about it back in our test for a prophet. Is God trying to trick us or does he want us to be protected?
He wants us to be protected.
So he gives us a simple test, right? Not a complex one.
That's right.
And isn't it something that we should test and if it fails, isn't it for our protection?
It is for our protection.
The New Testament declares that Micah's prophecy was fulfilled when Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Since Jesus was not born in Jerusalem, Alma fails the test of a prophet.